Hi, fam. Haven't seen you since yesterday morning's emotional set. So let me go on here real quick and start tagging people. I hope you guys did not get caught in all of the rain we had yesterday. A disaster over here. Started getting water in the basement. It was crazy. But that's what owning a home is like. Just goes right into one of the topics that I wanted to talk about, and it's going to be very short. As we know, most of your sustainable wealth is not by how much money you have in the bank. And not your liquid. It's what you own. Okay, banks can get robbed. They can have a market crash. 401ks. The only thing that African Americans could have was land. But before I get into that, I wanted to make a comment on something that somebody asked me my opinion about. So I'm going to make my comment on it, and then, as you know, when I'm looking this way, I'm always tagging. I'm not ignoring you. It was about Will and Jada. First, if you are single, and I say this with all sincerity, if you are single, shut the hell up. You do not know what's going on in people's houses and what their circumstances are. And what works for them may not be conventional for you. If that's the case, you better ask every Mormon in the House of Representatives to resign. Because in their faith, they do believe in polygamy. Some of my followers and friends are Muslim, who also believe in polygamy. Now, in the case of Jada and Will, there was no polygamy. No one was marrying anyone else. What they decided to do for their family, hey Jay, what they decided to do for their family was to put it on Will. Will said that he was at a point in their relationship about 5 years ago when he was ready to just go on his way, and that they would co-parent. I knew from Will's first marriage, when everybody was talking about he was gay and he was the lover of the other guy, the one that married Tisha Arnold. They've been best friends since way back on Prince of Bel-Air. So what I wanted to say on that, and I'm going to hit it and quit it. When you're married to someone, there are circumstances that causes times when you need to probably just give yourselves some space. If you can do it within the same house, and you as husband and wife have set the ground rules. Now, I don't know this young man that Jada, well, I can't say supposedly, she said she had a relationship with for about 3 or 4 years. The only part of that and that's just an opinion, and again, it's not my business, is that the boy that she was having this relationship with was actually a friend of one of her sons, and if I'm not sure, mistakenly, that kid was having some issues within his household and started staying at their household, and I think that was agreed upon both with Will and Jada, therapy, whatever. Now, if Jada took advantage of a broken child, that's a different topic. I don't know that the young boy, who was well over 21, said that he was taken advantage of, but Jada's a beautiful woman. She looks far younger than her age. I think some of you know that at some point back in the day, she thought she was going to be a rock star singer. And you can tell how they raise their kids. They have a lot of, freedom to do whatever they want. Remember back when Willow was doing Whip It, I think she was like 9. And even with, the son Will, Jaden, he kind of is an androgynous, they have their own system in their house. And so I'm not sitting over here in New Jersey judging about what they do in California. If Will wanted to divorce Jada for having an affair, that's Will's decision. Obviously, that ain't the decision that he wanted to make. And as much as he said he did not, like, Jada, well, look, I want to have a affair with whatever the kid's name. His name is really irrelevant to me. No. But he also did not say he did not know about it. Basically, before whatever happened between this kid and Jada, Will said he had already thought in his mind that he and Jada would never be back in a husband and wife situation. The reality of it is that maybe because their life ended up being on social media and their relationship on social media, maybe that was what they needed to get together to reevaluate what was going on and how it not just affects them, their children, and the people that she sits around the red table and have conversations. I don't believe in hypocrisy, but I don't ever recall, and I watch a lot of the red table, where Jada does a lot of judging about other people's relationships. If anything, she's always been pretty, liberal and, people making choices to do what's right for them. So that was my top. That's the only thing I wanted to say about the Will and Jada issue. We have so much going on. And I think Jay is on here so he can relate to me on my second topic. I want some of you to kind of, we're about to vote. I hope some of you did vote in the primaries. But it is obvious that 45 believes, I don't think he believed he was going to win, but he believes that he is going to lose. To give computations and pardons to every single personal friend is beyond the pale of justice. Let me tell you, there is a really long process that presidents are supposed to do. The difference between a pardon and a computation. If the president pardons you, it's as if whatever you did never happened. He pardons that crime. And what he did for Roger Stone was a computation. In other words, let's say they gave him 5 years or 10 years. He said 2 months was enough, so he commuted the rest of his sentence. All right, and a computation, you have to admit that the crime you did, you actually did it. So, in other words, he's saying, yes, I talked to WikiLeaks and I tried to get information on Hillary Clinton that affected the outcome of the 2016 election. That's what he said. He had to admit, in order for you to get a computation, you have to admit to the indictment upon which you were charged. In that indictment, he was found guilty for working with Guccifer and WikiLeaks to try to get information on Hillary Clinton. Now, I don't know what part of that you don't understand, but 45 just pardoned. I know I'm saying this repetitiously, but I think you need to hear it repetitiously. 45 gave Roger Stone a pardon for admitting that he took information from Guccifer, whatever his last name is over there in England, when he had that little conversation with Papadopoulos at the table, because he came back and told the whole thing, that he was trying to get information on Hillary Clinton. Now, that is treason. Now, when I say treason, See, most people think treason is a criminal act. If you do anything with a foreign country to override your country, so it is not literally an override as in a takeover, but to take the power of the presidency and give it to someone by foreign assistance. The same thing that I explained to you with Donald Jr. When Donald Jr. and Manafort and the two Russians were up at Trump Tower talking about exchanging information, when this chick says, oh no, I was just talking about him lifting the embargo on that President Obama said with regards to adoption, that's still negotiating information, governmental information with a foreign source. This is before he became President of the United States. So he had no legal covering for doing something illegal before you became president. So I would tell you not to worry so much about what's going to happen to Donald Trump right now, because nothing's going to happen to Donald Trump right now. The only thing that's going to happen to Donald Trump right now is whether you guys go and vote on November the 3rd. And when you vote as black people, I want you to think about how many black men are in prison for crimes they did not commit. 13% of us are supposedly this population. Only 13%, I don't know. I still have an issue with that number. It goes between 13 and 17. 48% of the bodies in prisons that private owners are getting $300 to $600 a day are filled by people of color. It is estimated that more than 40% of African American men in prison are in prison for crimes they did not commit. We can go back to the Central Park 5 and see how easy that is done. We can look at Breonna Taylor and they arresting her boyfriend when he has a right to carry, and look at what happened where they originally arrested him. And then they realized they can't arrest him because he had a legal gun. Yet they killed Breonna Taylor while she lied in her bed. I sent you the transcript of George Floyd because it was much deeper than I can't breathe. This man was having a complete conversation with Lane to the point that Lane said, well, you could breathe if you shut the F up and stop using all your oxygen to talk. When he was saying, when calling out his mother and telling his friends to tell his children he loved them, he had already been shot by a police before. That fear was not delirium that Lane talked about. Oh, he's in a drug delirium. Anytime they tell you that black people, when they start saying I can't breathe, go back and look at all of these videos. When Elijah McClain was being choked out, that boy was knocked out twice, and I know I'm reiterating some of the things that I said to you before. He was knocked out twice, and every time he said, I can't breathe, they kept saying, oh, he's in some kind of delirium. That's how he got that ketamine shot. So no doctor said that he was going through delusion. These officers decided that he was going through some delusions. So not a doctor, not a nurse. And I don't know what's the law in Colorado, but for you to give a man a shot of ketamine, which is what prepares your body for surgery, is beyond the pale. So when I'm talking about, defunding the police, we don't pay police to kill us. We don't pay police to strategically. Each one of the officers in the McClain case was on the force less than 3 years. So you can't say, oh, that's something they learned in the military. That's something they learned in the police department. Each one of them knew how to do it. And I don't know if you know the difference, but the 3 officers that got fired are not the 3 officers that were choking him. The 3 officers that got fired were actually 3 other officers that went to the memorial site where the people had laid, balloons and memorials. They were acting out the choking. And these are how brazen. This is Aurora, Colorado. Aurora, Colorado, where the white man went in and shot up everybody in the movie theater. Remember that? They arrested him. Not even a hair on his head was touched. And he went in there with an AK-47 just shooting up everybody in the movie theater. They arrested him, not one grab. You know, no pain, no strain. And you know, we go back to Dylan Roof. Dylan Roof killed 9 people in that church. They took Dylan Roof to McDonald's on his way. So when we talk about defunding the police, man, it's far past defunding the police. The relationship, there was a show, I don't know if you guys saw, where there was an arrest going on and the young brother was on the ground. Now this is where I'm going to get perturbed with my people. Whatever that boy was doing, he did it. Because he was trying to use the emotions of this present time to get over on whatever he had done in that store. Those 2 police officers were in a quandary. One officer was holding his arms. And the guy, because one guy said, "Don't put your knee on his neck." He said, "Sir, I don't have my knee on his neck." But what he was doing, the boy was holding his hands on his stomach, and they were telling him to put his hands behind his back. So when we're saying comply on issues like that, your ass should comply. All right, you should comply, because he wouldn't take his hands. So the officer was in a quandary. An officer really should not be in such a quandary. I'm telling you, because that officer used a whole lot of strength and a whole lot of prayer. That black man that came over and said, "Can I help you?" And all he did was take the boy's hand from under him. He went on the ground at first and talked to him face to face. And he said, "Stop resisting. Just give them your hands." And he wouldn't do it. So the officer the officer said, "Well, can you help?" So the officer held him down, and the black man took both of his hands so he could put him in the cuff. And the first thing they did was sit him up. Now, in a situation like that, and I had people ask me, "So what do you think? What do you think?" What do I think? First of all, it is not the duty of citizens to assist officers in arrest. Now, that is an officer extraordinaire. That is an officer post Breonna Taylor, post George Floyd, because we all know you come anywhere near an officer when they're making an arrest, your ass gonna get arrested too. So that's an anomaly. But more importantly, you don't always know that the person that is there to say that they're going to help is actually going to help. They could grab a police officer's weapon. So that's so I had a little bit of confusion as to how I was going, what I thought about that when asked. Let me see who's on here, because I have a couple of, hi Kimmy, Pilar, Lisa. You know what? I was really upset with you guys. I wrote that poem yesterday. That was not a Maya Angelou poem. The only words that I used from that poem was "and still we rise," and I thought I would at least have gotten a response, whether you liked it or you didn't like it. Because I do write poetry. I read a lot, so I like to read poetry. Hi, Cousin India. All right, this is one of the things I kept threatening about talking about, and I just never did. Because one of the things about African Americans, the reason why we own very little, is because we have no sustainable wealth. Now, one of my girlfriends is Lynette Kafali Cox. You guys probably see her on, she does a lot of the shows with regards to money and purchasing. I wanted to tell you something that I thought was important. By 1910, the record showed that more black Americans owned land than ever before in the history of the United States. Over 14 million acres. And this is before we never got our 40 acres and a mule, okay? The thing is that some of the plantation owners, people just stayed on the plantation and just worked it out. And because these farmers did not know how to run their plantations, what they did, or what they tried to do, is over the years, like everything else, like the Stockholm Syndrome, over the years, they did have relationships, not, physical relationships, but partnership relationships, because they did not know how to work the land. And so some of these plantation owners left land to their slaves. Their wives were gone. They had no children. But before, the Emancipation Proclamation, as we all know, that supposedly freed the slaves, black people could not go into a contract. You could not inherit land. So even if they put it in writing that I want this land to go to, John, the law enforcement will come and take the land and say that under the Constitution, an African American could not own land. So when the Irish and the Polish and the Jews and Germans come over here and from the Statue of Liberty, they did not have those types of restrictions. Redlining, which most of you understand, meant that blacks could only live in certain areas. So that's how segregation came about. We were always put on the poorest amount of land that was unable to produce crops. So the system of where we are today, because of that, the only thing that we can have that's valuable is land, because we have allowed all business, all corporations, everything we've ever invented. And I won't go through the thousands of inventions of African Americans because we'll be on here all day. But those inventions, the patent went to a white person, even if it was invented by a black person. So over 14 million acres of land was owned, and approximately 210,000 black persons, leading some historians to refer at this time at the height, and this is in the 1900s, and this was during 1921 when I told you that we had the Tulsa, Oklahoma. But there were other places. Charleston, South Carolina, used to be an entire black community. Since then, however, black land ownership has been on a steady decline. And a bid to Congress, the worsening issue of Congress came up with was the Farmers Home Act, the FHA. We still have the FHA, which intended to extend credit to small income farmers, particularly black Americans, with the establishment of the political rights for all black Americans' right to own land in the southern states and begin improving. So everything they started that was supposed to be for us didn't go to us. That helped white farmers. It did not help black farmers, even though the FHA, the FHA, just like Women's Lib, nothing that this country ever formed at the benefit of black people did we ever get the benefit of. Despite these efforts, black ownership of land continued to decline, and many black Americans were still experiencing land loss. In 1969, this is in my lifetime, in 1969 I was 8 years old, James Forman began a long campaign dubbed the Black Manifesto, which he called for reparations to be paid to black Americans, as well as land banks in the South meant to offer financial assistance for those experiencing land loss. This was called later in 1973. Now, again, I was in 8th grade. Only 6 million acre campaign led by Bob Brown. 6 million acres of land across the United States had been taken from black people because they had no legal right to give land to their heirs. So if you only had one kid, and God forbid you only had a daughter, women could not own land. So if you had a daughter, white folks could just come and take her land. If your father died and he had a wife and a daughter and he owed any taxes, she could not pay the taxes even if she had the money to pay the taxes. They came and took the land. So the way this whole system was set up is so that we could not ever move forward. So when you're talking about 401 years of standing still and the inability, if we had maintained land that we had gained, not through 40 acres and a mule, but because we tilled the land to the death of the plantation owners, and we still couldn't get the land because, like I told you, Abraham Lincoln in the Emancipation Proclamation said that the slaves, the Confederate slaves, not the Union slaves, were free. But he did not say slavery was illegal. And because slavery wasn't illegal, those who were still working on the plantation still got slave wages. Nothing. So what some of the landowners said, if you work these lands for me, I will give you the land upon my death. Some of them actually did that. And some of these older, how can I put it? I don't even want to refer to us as slaves, but some of the elders who stood and worked out the land thought that I'm going to work this land until my death, because then I can give it to my children. That never happened. Because even if the slave owner left the land to his to the slaves, now free slaves, now sharecroppers, black sharecroppers, like, we made the sharecropping machine that learned to till the land that white people in Montana and all the places in Texas are using. We built that. We made that because why? We were doing it by hand. So the sharecropper machine, which was used to be pulled by mules, was that whole process was done by a black man. So we're talking about years and years of how they transferred our wealth. Using government grants, the Emergency Land Fund conducted search to determine why black Americans was losing land at an alarming rate. It was found the primary reason for the land loss was the property policy that families' owned land was easily lost in loans and encumbrances. If you got any loans, they would give you the highest rates. If you missed a payment, it was put in your contract. If you missed 2 payments, the bank now owns your land. Hell, we can miss 2 payments in mortgage right now under this pandemic. What difference does it make? It's the same situation. Further research has suggested that the additional reason for black land loss was discrimination by the Department of Agriculture and discrimination policies put by the Farmers Home Administrator. The FHA, which was formed for the purposes of African Americans, put policies within that organization that took the land away from the black people that they said that the organization was actually formed for. Eventually, the Emergency Land Fund merged with other federations, similar goals in the 1990s. Now we're all the way up to the 1990s. They petitioned for the passage of land to offer assistance to black farmers. During the same year, a lawsuit was filed that sought redress for the plight of black farmers. Despite these actions and awareness campaign, in 1992, a caravan to march on Washington because of the black land loss continued. To this day, 1997, the Department of Agriculture responded by holding talks with farmers, coming up with ideas. Like right now, that's all we're doing is we're talking. We're talking, but we're not doing anything. We can continue to have these conversations, but if the conversation is not connected to actual actions. So one of the things that I said, and I am not kidding, and I don't care if I have to do a petition or whatever it needs to be done. I believe that my voice in Washington right now is needed because I'm going to tell you, whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you're Hispanic, a lot of what's happening right now is because all we do is a lot of talk. We allow, be it Joe Biden, be it President Obama, be it Donald Trump. Donald Trump he's just talking out of his behind right now. He's just saying stuff just to alarm white people. Because you said black militia on one side and the whites on the other side. If we're gonna go toe to toe, this is gonna be ugly. I just saw it, and not to digress, I just saw this white woman. She was at a park, and she was sitting on a bench, and I guess it was a biracial couple was approaching her, and she started just yelling out, "You effing nigger lover, you effing nigger lover." I mean, this woman was so ratchet. Now, this is a white woman, and I'm going to tell you, if that was a black woman that was yelling out some crazy stuff like that, the police would have been there lickety split. Talking about, I want to see your tatas, and she ain't saying tatas. Suck my D. This woman was ratchet. Everybody sat and videotaped her, and I watched, and I said, I'm waiting on, I know this park has got some police officers. No police officers came. So, let's understand. If we work this land for 401 years, I don't want to hear anybody say that we didn't work for it. We damn sure worked for it. And some of these plantation owners actually gave land to their sharecroppers of color that were no longer enslaved. This government has and always has redlined us into communities. To this day, Newark, you know where the Irish are. You know where most of the Italians are. You know where most of the Portuguese are. And though I live in a pretty much multiracial community, college town, 2 blocks from here, in either direction, I could be in Newark. 2 blocks in the opposite side, I could be in Orange. And in 2 blocks in another direction, I could be in the poorest part of West Orange, which would be all black. So the redlining is still going on. Now, the argument that Malcolm made that was adverse to the argument that Martin was making is that, let us have our own towns. But they're not going to let you do that. That's why you get a Tulsa, Oklahoma, and burn it down. That's how you can get a Charlottesville and they burn it down. Every single time we took it upon ourselves to build our own communities, to build our own schools. Tulsa, Oklahoma was not the first one. Even with the blowing up of the community in Philadelphia, you may not like the way they prayed or the way they dressed, but they were patrolling their own land, their own little part of the block in Philadelphia. So we cannot continue to believe the hype that we were not smart enough or good enough or weren't able to handle our business. Some of us were sneaking and learned to read. The funny thing was every white person, even back in the day, wasn't hateful. Some of the children who thought like children, who played with the little black children, taught them to read. Even though they had to pretend that they couldn't read. They could read. They could not only read, they could write. You have to ask yourself, how was Frederick Douglass making this speech at the time he made the speech for the 4th of July if he couldn't read and was profoundly able to read? When we hear about Langston Hughes and all these people, they traveled. Paris allowed black people to travel back and forth I don't know how many times. So today I'm just going to keep it short, and I just want you guys to understand first topic, stay out of people's bed. Just like I tell people, don't be telling me about whether I can get an abortion or not. Or I ain't getting no abortion, but if my child got raped, and I'm not making my child keep no baby. So stay out of people's legs. All of you evangelicals, you've already written your decision with the God that I serve. Because if you serving the same God that I serve, you're gonna have some problems on that hellfire. That's all I'm saying. If that is such a thing, not that I believe necessarily in that, but I do believe that everybody will pay for their deeds or non-deeds. But more importantly, as we continue to get closer to this election, I'm so worried about my child going to school. And all of you who have children that's going to college, you need to stay in tune with the states that your children are going to school to. If we can't travel from state to state within the United States, because states like Florida, where they're opening up beaches and pools and indoor eating and indoor dining, and you send your kid to that school, your kid is not going to stay in their room the whole time that they're in school. Now they're fighting, like with Harvard and MIT, are actually suing the government because so many students, international students, got accepted to schools in the United States. If they've already paid their deposits, I'm not quite sure how you're going to stop them from going to school. Now, my daughter has been in school for 3 years. I'm not quite sure how you're going to stop her from going to school. I do believe, and I think what Harvard and MIT is saying they're going to do, is that the first year students will have to go to school online. I think that is fair. You can't miss what you haven't had. However, I don't know that, you remember you have to take a writing class. Most of the classes you take in your first year is a precursor to whatever your major is. Now, some of that may be able to be done over computers, some of it's not. A lot of it is going to be exploratory. But as we continue on this journey, I am going to be trying to continue. I'm taking, and actually I just got the application to do the DC bar. I don't have to take any bars anymore because I already have enough bars. So I had the DC bar. I just have to reinstate the DC bar. So to get the reinstation of the DC bar, I'm already barred to the Supreme Court. So any federal cases I can already do. And I am really thinking about going in that direction. So if anybody of you have any connections within the colleges, any of the HSBCUs, Bowie, Howard, or either Georgetown or Academic University, which is where my line sister, American University, which is where my line sister got her graduate degree. I'm trying to look into probably teaching on the college level, and then working my way into helping with some of the policies that I think that will really break ground for really trying to reinvent this America, because that's what was going. Taking the flag off of the, taking the Confederate flag off of that Mississippi flag was not even a big draw. That was not even put on that flag until 1950. That was way after the Civil War. All of those monuments were built in the 1950s, way after the Civil War. The only purpose that they were there is to remind black people that we still in control. And so we don't need to be reminded. So that's why, so I will ask you to go back and listen to the poem that I wrote, and not Maya Angelou, and give me your opinion. So I make me feel a little more comfortable that I like sometimes I think things in my head. And I get up every night. I always have a pen and paper by my bed, and I write things that that come to my mind. So with that, still we rise. We always rise. Like kings and queens, we hold our head up high, because we will always rise. Grace and peace. No, I don't talk to you on Sunday, so I'll see you on Monday.